Welcome once again to Cinemaholics, the major motion podcast where we talk about the biggest and the best films coming to theaters and streaming online. I gotta say though, in 2024, it's been hard trying to find the best films. But okay, from the San Francisco Bay Area, I'm Jon Negroni, film editor for InBetweenDrafts.com. And from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, homegrown, he is a freelance film writer, and to this day, he owns a car that is going places. It's Will Ashton.
What up? Yeah, I can finally say for once on this podcast that I am in a film that we're talking about.
Sure. We never did a retro review of Perks of Being a Wallflower, I guess.
No, we did not. No. But it's been a bit of a...
We did talk about Mindhunter.
We didn't
and
review
American
it.
Pickle.
Well, that's the thing, right? Is that... So, yeah, I mean, back when I was freshly out of high school, I did some extra work in Perks of Being a Wallflower, a film that apparently is more popular than I originally thought, just going off of Letterboxd. Like, I looked at it, and it's like one of the most watched films on the site. I'm assuming because of how young the general audience is for Letterboxd, but
I remember when it came out. I was right out of college, and I just remember, I think part of it was like the Emma Stone role, kind of like, or not Emma Stone, Emma Watson. I think that had a lot of people interested because they were like, oh, Hermione after Harry Potter, that's interesting. And so I think that also the movie was interesting. People liked it, and it was one of those few movies that could work back. It's like at the very end of when a movie like that could have some kind of cultural, like monoculture shared awareness that doesn't really happen anymore.
I guess I just don't remember it being like a big box office hit. I remember it was like well liked, but in any case.
So launched an Imagine Dragons song, which that's a whole other controversy, because that was the first time I ever heard Imagine Dragons was... actually, no, that's not true. I think I heard the song before the trailer, but I remember being like, oh, I've heard the song before. Anyway, we're not here to talk about Perks of Being a Wallflower.
Okay.
But
anyway.
Yeah. Real quick.
Okay.
You don't forget, I just got to remind the listeners that they can find more episodes of Cinemaholics, including our full archive on cinemaholics.com. And our email is cinemaholics@gmail.com if they want to reach out. That's all. And as always, we always ask that if you like the show, please consider rating us on Apple Podcasts. It really does help. You know what to do, and we appreciate it. But sorry, Will, you were going to say something really cool?
Well, I was going to say, I mean, since then, I mean, it's very infrequent, but anytime they do film something around here, just out of curiosity and interest in Pittsburgh, of course, where I'm from, you know, I like to be... You know, I haven't really directed a lot or like written a lot of films or anything, maybe a couple shorts out of college. But yeah, I mean, I just don't really have a lot of film set experience. So it's always fun for me not only to be like involved with it, but to see the gears kind of turning and stuff. Because like, I don't know, there's been a whole thing this week, at least with like the Chris Stuckman thing. I don't know if you've even been following that, where he chose not to review improper, like one of the movies this week, Madam Web, because he was like,
right.
Oh, I've worked on indie set, or, you know, whatever. He said like, I wouldn't feel comfortable doing it because I know how hard it is to work on a film set or whatever. And the thing is, I think he's mostly wrong, but I think there is a kernel of truth there in the sense of like, I think a lot of people...
It's a personal choice.
Well, that's
I think he just doesn't feel comfortable doing it. I don't know if sorry, I did watch part of the Madam Web thing. I got kind of bored, but I don't know. Based on what he was saying, I get more of the sense that like it just is something that kind of icks him, and he's like, "Yeah, I don't feel comfortable doing it." And you know what? Like, sure, like that's fine. There are other directors who would do. I don't get the sense that he like has that as a mandate that like nobody should do that if you know they're a director, they worked on a movie or something.
Well, in any case, what I was trying to say is, I don't think it was. I mean, I'm of the opinion that you know if he wants to be a critic or if he wants to be a filmmaker, that's here or there. I don't think he should feel that those two should conflict or interact with each other. I'm not really here, though, to criticize him or his thoughts or that video. I'm just saying there is a small kernel of truth, which is I feel like most people like ourselves are benefited if they do get a chance to even be a very small part of a film set, because you do actually learn quite a bit about the process, what goes involved with it, what like directing or even like PA work is or stunt work or you know, just like you get to kind of see on the ground level, like what it's like to make a film.
Yeah,
so
totally.
I definitely.
Go ahead.
No, I just was going to say, I mean, if anyone ever gets a chance, outside of it just being fun, you know, I would recommend, especially if if you're in a similar line of as work as ourselves.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in terms of Chris Tuckman, I think, it comes across to me as he doesn't want to be a critic anymore. He just wants to be a film enthusiast, which I'm like, yeah, sure. I mean, you already kind of were, but not a dig at him at all. I think he seems like a very nice guy. But
I've been a film enthusiast all my life.
I grew up enthusiasing films.
Right, that's it. Yeah,
he genuinely seems like a pretty decent dude. So I hope his movie is successful. But I think for me, I've never worked on a movie. I don't think I've been on a movie set. I think I've been on sets though. I have worked on like commercials and things like that. So I do have experience in just like the production of something and a script and things like that, which is probably why I've never had an interest in myself, being a film creator person. I've always felt more comfortable working on books and things like that. So I get what you're saying, because it does add to your knowledge, but it's also kind of like it's like a two-way street. It's like the more interested you are in the medium, the more you're going to gravitate toward those opportunities to be on a set, and kind of, those things kind of feed into each other a lot too. I think there are some people who wouldn't enjoy being an extra in a movie, even unless they were like super passionate about movies and they really, enjoyed the process. And, maybe there are some people who do, have that passion, but then they go to a set and they have to do the long labor of being an extra sitting around, and they're like, yeah, maybe this isn't for me. So it's a multifaceted experience. I'm sure many of our listeners, because we have plenty of film enthusiasts and, film critics who listen to us for whatever reason, who I think, to what you're saying, would love being on a set. I can definitely see that.
Yeah. But anyway, all that is to say, since we've done this show, I haven't really had the privilege of actually being in a film. That's not to say I haven't been involved with film productions, but it's just been kind of a trial and error sort of thing. As you mentioned, I got to do a very small scene in Where'd You Go, Bernadette, which Richard Linklater. It was cool to, be in the same room as him, but that scene entirely was cut. And I didn't get to see it, which I guess worked out because I didn't think that film was very good. But as you mentioned, I did a couple scenes with American Pickle, which I was really excited about. And I do actually like that film a decent bit. But yeah, that scene also, both scenes I think I was involved with were cut completely, which I was really surprised by and disappointed by, even though I do like the film. So I was weary but optimistic when I heard that a Coen brother, I can't say the Coen brothers, two of my absolute favorite filmmakers. I think I've talked about them at length on this show.
Sure.
I love them. They've been very formative to my love and fascination of film and comedy and just what you can do with storytelling as well. But, I was like, I don't know if this is going to work out, but I went to what they would call, I guess, a casting call for extras. It's not like you do an audition. You just kind of, get your picture taken, you fill out a form, and then just hope for the best.
Sure, yeah.
But it worked out because, and the thing where they talk about your car, it's like, what kind of car do you drive? At the time, and I guess as of now, but I don't know when this episode comes out, am driving a 2000 Pontiac Montana. As people who see this film will know, it takes place in 1999. So, totally coincidental. I was just there to see if I could get in a Coen brother movie. But they're all excited.
You couldn't have known, right, that it was set in 1999 at that point.
Right. Yeah, so they were all hyped. So to my great fortune, I'd say, I got, several calls to be involved with this film, even to the point where I couldn't do an episode of our sister podcast, Mad Men, because I was working on one of the scenes in this film. And so, I got the privilege of being around for a few days on this film. And I also got to do an in-person scene, which to my great surprise is also in the film. So
it didn't get cut. Yeah, one of the Coen brothers at least recognized the error of Richard Linklater and whoever directed American Pickle, I forget.
Sure. But yeah, so all that to say, for one, obviously I'm going to be very biased in my opinion of this film. Can't really say I have a clear objective opinion of the film. That's not to say I feel I can't share my opinion, but I'll obviously have a few caveats there. But also I just think I feel very blessed, I guess, is what I'm trying to say is, not a lot of people get to, have a direct experience with some of their favorite filmmakers, let alone see themselves in one of their films. So that's not me bragging. That's not me, trying to be hoity-toity or anything. That's just me genuinely being very thankful about my odd place in life, and just that, something totally I would never expected when I was, 13-year-old watching like Big Lebowski and Fargo and stuff, thinking whatever happened has happened. And, it's obviously a very small thing. It's like a blink you miss a cameo, but I don't know. It's just really cool, man. I don't know.
It's
I don't
really
have
cool
anything.
to see. And
Yeah.
well, and I think it speaks too to, taking a step back from it, that Pennsylvania is a cool place to shoot a movie because it's a very unique place in terms of how you can shoot a scene there and how it can be period. Should be stated. Perks of Being a Wallflower. This movie, they're both 90s movies, and there's plenty of other, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania movies that have been shot that take place in the 70s, and things like that. So
I get it. You're saying we're lost in time.
I think that no, you're you're unique. Like you got like a cool aesthetic and feel that's kind of timeless.
Yeah, you're saying we're not hip with it and that we don't have the ritz and glamour of San Francisco.
You forget where I live.
So
barring San Francisco, California especially, and like San Jose, the Silicon Valley, it's like the Truman Show when it comes to like the architecture and the buildings themselves. It is so staid. It's like copy paste. Everything looks the same. It's all chain restaurants. It's like that all over America. So no, I am unironically being like, yeah, Pittsburgh, I've never been, but it does seem to have like a pretty unique feel that you can't get just anywhere. You know what I mean? So, and I am lucky that, San Francisco is like that as well. San Francisco is extremely unique, as we all know. So
yeah, I mean, I don't want you to down talk San Francisco. I mean, I was blessed enough to
I'm down talking Silicon Valley. I'll do that all day. Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Bay Area at large.
Sure. But no, I mean, I think San Francisco is a very lovely area by and large. But yeah, I mean, obviously it's going to have its downsides like any city, I'm sure.
Yes. I'm sure somebody out there has an opinion about San Francisco. But no, we're here to talk about Drive-Away Dolls. I have to admit, it's hard for me to talk about this movie at this point. I saw it a long time ago, and like 2-3 weeks ago. And I literally we're talking about this movie right after I just watched Dune Part 2, which was nearly 3 hours.
Sure.
And so obviously that movie is like digging in my brain right now. But obviously not here to talk about Dune Part 2. I will be working on my review of that literally right after we talk about this one. I'll do my best. Yeah. So you have your bias going into this, and I have my bias of wanting to think about Dune instead.
Yeah. I mean, also
balances out.
Almost polar opposites in the sense of Dune, I have to assume, was close to, if not 3 hours. And this is a breezy, in my opinion, 84 minutes. If it's like barely even feature-length film in some respects.
There was a point where this movie was just ending, and I was like, wow, that was real quick. But yeah, let's set this one up for people who don't know the story. So Drive-Away Dolls, we've already mentioned, is directed by one of the Coen brothers, Ethan Coen. Now, just as a quick refresher, the Coen brothers have been, they've made movies together since the early 90s. Or not the early 90s, early 80s, excuse me. Blood Simple was 84.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Joel has directed one movie on his own. That was The Tragedy of Macbeth. That was the A24 Apple TV Plus award season movie that it didn't get a lot of accolades, but critics definitely responded well to it. I didn't love it, but Will, you really loved it. I think it was in your top 10 of 2021, if I'm not mistaken.
No, it wasn't in my top 10.
Oh, okay.
I did. I think mentions? I put it. Yeah, I think I did put it in my honorable mentions. I do quite enjoy it. Obviously, I think it is kind of missing, some of the flavor of their collaborations. And that's not to say because it's black and white. I just mean, I feel like it is kind of strained in a way that I feel like is a little, their collaborations are a little bit more loose and free flowing. But yeah, no, I still enjoy it. I think it is a really solid film. And I think at this point, a little underrated given how you and some other people have kind of...
Okay. Well,
sure.
As far as Ethan Coen goes, just in 2022, his first solo was he did Jerry Lee Lewis, Trouble in Mind. That was an A24 movie, a documentary.
Has still not come out.
Yeah, that thing has been on the shelf for quite a while. And that movie also, edited by Tricia Cooke, Ethan Coen's wife, and Drive-Away Dolls, is not just directed by Ethan Coen, who co-wrote the script, but also wrote the screenplay and edited the film together with Tricia Cooke. So, and they produced it. Drive-Away Dolls, which we've already said too, takes place in 1999. And this is a Focus Features film. It stars Margaret Qualley, Geraldine Viswanathan, Beanie Feldstein, Colman, Domingo, Pedro, Pascal, Bill Camp, Matt Damon, and Will Ashton. I've, of course, had to fit you in there. And the setup of this movie, it's interesting. It's kind of like, how to describe this thing. It was actually pitched in January 2007 under the title Drive-Away Dykes, which is definitely a different, speaking to this being a queer film, this was something that was originally going to take place, I think, in the 70s, I think, or it was going to be like ripping more from like 70s exploitation movies. But you do get a lot of that. It's kind of got a little bit of Tarantino to it. It's got a lot of classic Coen brothers to it as well. It's gone through a lot of development hell. There have been a lot of different stars attached to it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I should note that this is one of those films that I think initially, from what I can recall, Tricia Cooke and Ethan Coen weren't really planning to make. It was just kind of more of like a relationship exercise. From what I heard, like they were just kind of, because they both work.
They pitched the movie literally to a friend.
Yeah.
That was pitched in ages ago.
But I don't know if initially they were even planning to make it. It has kind of like, hey, let's just write something fun and see what happens, which I think is really embedded into the film. But I'm sure you're right that along the way, at various points, they maybe even entertain the idea to the point of, maybe almost getting funding or having different stars attached or what have you. But I do believe, if I am correct, that the initial conceit was just like a writing exercise, basically just kind of like seeing what would happen if the two of them would write a movie together and just kind of, having some fun professionally and personally.
This is the first time that Ethan Coen, I think both of the Coens were kind of taking a step back from making movies after Ballad of Buster Scruggs. Mm-hmm. They haven't been as prolific just because I think it might have been Ethan who said that he was basically like, it's not really fun for me anymore. And, I think both of them kind of are feeling that, but more Ethan at this point. So to what you're saying, this was something that apparently COVID happened. And so Ethan and Tricia Cooke, like they were like, you know what, let's make this movie. Sure. And so here we are now. The movie is about two lesbians. They're played by Margaret Qualley and Geraldine Viswanathan. Margaret Qualley, who kind of plays like Shane from the L Word, the kind of like, she's very extroverted. She likes to sleep with a lot of people. She's in a relationship, but she cheats on her girlfriend all the time. She's very dynamic and a bit of a dynamo, right? And then Geraldine Viswanathan kind of plays this like office worker who's very repressed, very like doesn't give anybody an inch, very kind of like, she hasn't been in a relationship in a while. She just kind of looks at the world very strangely. Not strangely, I should say, but a little bit more seriously, more sternly. The two of them kind of get involved in this sort of impromptu road trip where it just kind of feels like both of them just want to get out of town for a while, drive down to Tallahassee. They take a drive-away car, like renting a car to bring it down there. And they unwittingly get wrapped up into some kind of criminal conspiracy because there's apparently a briefcase with something very, very bad in the briefcase. So a little bit of No Country for Old Men dancing around in there, a little bit of something like Bad Times at El Royale, that kind of like grimy, like I said, 70s sort of exploitation, criminal thing. This movie, though, kind of plays it more as like a psychedelic comedy at times, definitely more of like a black comedy in some ways. It does have like straight up just black comedic scenes, but then it also has like the typical guns and violence and everything. I'm just going to say off the bat, Will, I'm very happy that you're in this movie. I spotted you. I was very excited. I saw your car, and that was really nice. I hate this movie. I think that this movie is horrifically bad. And I don't know what happened here because I think the setup is actually very interesting. And watching the trailer, I was like, man, I'm actually getting into this. I feel like this could be a really fun setup. I like that it's set in 1999. It's got that grimier feel to it. It seemed like the dry humor was really going to work for me. This movie, though, you kind of mentioned it's 84 minutes. The pacing is hellish. I tend to find it just completely incoherent in a lot of different ways. But when it comes down to it, I think these characters, I don't know what went wrong here with these characters, but I think they are so interesting in the very beginning. They're kind of an odd couple. And I wanted to spend the movie getting to know them more. I feel like as the movie went on, they vanished and they stopped being characters to me. And they started just sort of being strung along by the plot. And I was horribly disappointed because, I think the very first scene, the cold open, also very awkward and stilted. And I was like, this is kind of strange. I'm not sure what this movie's energy is, but I'll stick with it. Maybe it'll come along. And then, we start to get introduced to the characters. I'm like, oh, this is kind of fun. This is kind of wacky at points. Beanie Feldstein's kind of funny. But then once the plot really kicks in, with the exception of a handful of scenes and a couple of like character choices that I thought were really, genuinely kind of funny and intriguing, this movie just completely lost me. It gets to a point where the cameos become nonsense. And it's frustrating because there is a reveal of like what's in the briefcase. I think that's perfect. I think that there are like elements here. I'm just like, there's nuggets here, but it doesn't come together for a story at all for me. I think that this is just like I drove away from the theater just feeling like, I got dolled up for nothing. But Will Ashton, tell us all about your A+ for Drive Away Dolls.
Well, speaking of getting dolled up, I guess I should say, like you, I think we saw it on the same day. I'll bet you saw it briefly before me. So you primed me that I would be in the film. So with that in mind, I got my finest tuxedo t-shirt on.
I saw the photos.
Yeah, it's on Instagram if you wish to see it. I also put a nice little bow tie on my car, which was more labor intensive than I anticipated.
Worth
it. The only downside was that, I guess because I was driving on the highway to get to the theater, the bow tie at some point, unbeknownst to me, flew off the car before I got to the theater. But thankfully, I got a picture beforehand, so the memories can live on. But in any case, yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm going to be biased, not only because my involvement with the film, even if it's very, very small, but also just because of how much I like the filmmaker involved. But I don't know. I had a good time with this, man. I mean, I know, yeah, I get what you're saying as far as like structurally, this thing is just a mess. Like, obviously, even at 84 minutes, I think it does. I agree with you. I think it does kind of lumber in the middle a little bit. It feels less sure-footed in that segment. But even in certain points, it doesn't feel as confidently directed. Maybe just because Ethan isn't someone who, usually directs by himself. Although it should be said, obviously, she's not credited as such. But from what I have heard, Tricia Cooke was basically the co-director of the film. So I guess that should be noted as well. And I think that took you aback when I mentioned that, because you were of the opinion that none of these women characters sounded like they ever came from the pen or the direction of a woman. I believe you were saying that off the air, though I don't want to speak on your behalf.
At times, not the entire movie, but yeah, like there were just some strange things that were happening in this movie. Like they have exceptions, because I think that there's a whole scene involving like this all-girls sports team where that to me felt like, yes, that was something dreamed up by someone who clearly has like a voice of like femininity or something. It could have been, you think, I don't know, but that to me rang authentic. But then there were other things that, especially like the second half of the movie, where the characters started just, I don't know, again, they completely lost me with like what their characterization was, like what their motivations were, what they were trying to accomplish. And it just, it baffled me and really got on my nerves, because I wanted to really like this movie.
But anyway, yeah, I mean, as you were mentioning, it is kind of a blending of certain genres. I think for me, it does feel mostly like sort of a Russ Meyer Pache, by way of like the tone of something like Raising Arizona, the Coen brothers film, along with
Dark Americana, which I love. I want more of these movies. That even makes me more upset.
As well as something like, as I mentioned before, like Big Lebowski, in the sense of like a character kind of finding himself in a genre film. Like these characters are sort of like happenstance finding themselves in this sort of, thriller film, not really like by choice, but like not super passive either. But yeah, I mean, I think for me, I think it just does kind of rely on the wit and the charm of the screenplay and the charm of the cast. I really do think Margaret Qualley is really coming into her own as not only an actress, but a lead actress. Obviously, she is Andie MacDowell's daughter, and I feel like she's even, in some respects, better than her mom as far as like being naturally kind of charismatic and having just a real like earnestness and likability as far as her screen presence goes. Geraldine Venezuela, is that how you pronounce her?
Geraldine Viswanathan.
Viswanathan, yeah. Her performance felt maybe a little bit more effortful, I guess, in the sense of like it didn't feel as natural compared to her co-star, but I think she plays well, and I think they have a warm sort of chemistry together.
They have chemistry? Says who? I genuinely, I was looking for it. They had more chemistry when they were kind of like almost frenemies, but then as the movie goes on, this movie's missing things. Like it's missing entire scenes, it feels like, because like establishing scenes. I did not get this character. There were times when they're communicating with each other, and I'm like, but wait, like 3 scenes ago, this was a completely different dynamic. And so why isn't that being set up? I don't know. I agree with you about Qualley. I think she's good in this. Like she's playing a character. Viswanathan, I just felt like, I don't know, there was something with the character here where I was like, it was getting lost on the page or something. I'm not sure what was going on there. And I'm a big fan of Viswanathan, as you know.
Yeah, I really like her as well. I don't know if I fully agree. I think it's intentional that her journey is a little bit more insular, and like there's a whole thing with a book that I won't give away that I think is kind of central to her character dynamic that I think the film isn't really shy about spelling out. But I don't think I felt that same sort of absence that you felt in that respect. Though I think you can say, and maybe this comes down to pacing, that there is a sort of like over-eagerness, like a rushing sort of pacing here that does kind of feel like maybe the smaller moments don't really get as much time to breathe just because the film feels so active. And it should be said that I think because this is edited by Tricia Cooke as opposed to the Coens who usually edit their own films, it does have a different sort of like energy going into it as far as the edit goes. Like there's a lot of like, like sort of like zip cuts and like just some like very, very unexpected sort of scene transitions throughout, not just the sort of psychedelic stuff that you were referring to earlier, but just like the way that frames will just kind of change from scene to scene. Is just, I think people are going to be surprised if they're Coen heads like, myself, as far as the way, the style of the film. But I don't know. I mean, it's almost like a stereotype or like a cliche to say that, Joel is a serious Coen brother and Ethan's the funny one, but like they're not doing anything in their separate efforts to dissuade that. Obviously, I mean, this one, like you said, if it is a way for Ethan Coen to just kind of fall in love with the passion of making film again, I think it was a worthwhile effort. I think it's, obviously it's a lesser effort. I think it's a minor Coen film. And I feel like, both of their films separately, unless I'm proven otherwise, are probably going to be minor films until they hopefully, collaborate again. But I can't say I had a bad time with this. I earnestly and sincerely had a really good time. I got to see it with my mom, and it was just very sweet. A night out for us.
Wasn't awkward at all, or?
Actually, I thought it was going to be, but I don't know. I didn't think it was awkward. It felt like we were just
Ashton's
both
pretty hip.
I think we were just both having fun, and I got to point out when my car was in the film. I got to point out when I was in the film, and it was just like
pretty nice.
I don't know. We just had a good time, I mean, yeah, I can't, like I said, maybe take my opinion with some grains of salt, but I don't know. I genuinely don't feel the hatred or the animosity you feel towards this film, because I just think it's so, I don't know, agreeable, I guess, that I have a hard time feeling any sort of anger, I guess, towards the film.
I don't know. I didn't have that same agreeability. There are these two characters, like they're like the criminal characters who work for Colman Domingo. They have a very sort of Fargo dynamic.
Yes.
That I was liking at first because I was like, Fargo, I like this. But then at a certain point, I was like, but this feels like just a lesser copy of something that Joel clearly feels comfortable doing. And I felt like by the end of it, I didn't get anything out of it. I felt like it just kind of amounted to not really anything. And so to me, the movie, you have to hang on to like the lesbian sort of friendship here. And so that's more interesting to me. That's different. That's something that I haven't really seen in a Coen Brothers movie, especially with these two very, up and coming actors who are becoming more and more well known. And I just think it kind of flubs. And what's the insight? I feel like it's a movie with nothing but boring parts in terms of like characters moving along.
Well, yeah, I got several things to say to that. First, as far as the two guys there, the henchmen, who I do think I would be remiss if I didn't say, the obvious, which is that they are very much the Cobb and Cooper to ourselves. So maybe that's
a little bit more R-rated, but sure.
Sure. But maybe that was part of my appreciation of their things. Like, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to argue otherwise. I mean, I just rewatched shortly before I saw this film, Fargo, which I maintain is, if not their best, certainly one of the best, and one of my absolute favorite films. And I think a pretty damn near perfect film as well.
If I had to pick a personal favorite, it usually comes down to like Hail Caesar myself.
That's interesting. I really like Hail Caesar. I can't say it's my favorite, but I mean, I think that's a credit to the Coens that
it's a personal thing. Yeah, it's just more of like it's my movie for me.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very I can see that one being a very easy like comfort watch, like in a way that Big Lebowski is like kind of a comfort watch for me. But in any case, yeah, I get what you're saying, where it doesn't really lead to anything, but to me that feels like totally Coen brother-esque. Like their sort of final scenes together feel like straight out of like Burn After Reading. Just the sort of nonsense and the goofiness and the the way that it like there's no like I can't say there's no rhyme or reason to it, but there is a sort of like a deliberate sort of disconnect there that I feel was very, I don't know, just feels very spirited and funny. And I felt more inspired by that than I think if they went a more traditional, thriller noir kind of route as you were anticipating.
I guess where I differ is that, I agree. Burn After Reading is so outlandish, but I do think there is something like there was a takeaway with that movie that I remember that I did kind of get something from, especially at the time when I watched it. I watched it at a very specific time in my life. And a lot of this could come down to me watching a movie like this at this point. I feel like I'm watching Tarantino, the L Word, and I'm kind of like, it's so passe. It's so kind of out of, step with where I think, a lot of this material kind of is at this point. I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm reading too many like queer books or something. And I'm like, kind of bogged down in my expectations of what like, a queer narrative, in this way could be. Because I kind of went into it being like, this feels kind of like a fresh premise. And then I walked away being like, what really was fresh about it? And I don't know. There was something that I just kept waiting to happen, with it.
Well, I think it should be said, and obviously the Burn After Reading connection is more directed towards that subplot that we're talking about, the B plot of the film. But I do think this is more overtly political than, most of the Coen brothers films. Like for some obvious reasons later on, but I think there is just a sort of
that's fair.
I do think the film is saying something. Like I don't think it
comes out of nowhere. I kind of get that because like it was like the very end of the movie, where I was like, oh yeah, now you're gonna try to get a point out of it. But to me, it was so limp, no pun intended, that I'm just kind of like,
I guess for me, I don't know. Maybe this just comes down to expectations, but I don't think like I said, there's a point to it politically speaking, but I don't think they're even really trying to make like a grand statement in the scheme of things. I think this is really just kind of just like a fun, sort of just genre exercise for these two filmmakers. I think they just, just kind of having fun with it again. Like I said, I mean, if this is just their way of kind of being re-enchanted with filmmaking, it totally makes sense to me. Just like there's, I guess, a liberation that's felt here. And that's not, just kind of talking to the democratic themes of the film, but rather, like you were referencing before, the overt sexuality of the film, which, obviously there's sex in some of the Coen brothers films, but there is a sort of more chaste nature to those films, like, or there's like a kind of Old Testament mindset to them as far as like their
it's implied, but never, yeah.
Sure. But like there is a sense here, not even a sense, just like there's a liberation, like I was mentioning, of being overt sexually and being raunchy that I just feel is kind of refreshing for this filmmaker. I mean, in a way that like I can see why like he didn't make this with Joel if like maybe that was the like if doing straight Shakespeare adaptations was what was preventing Joel from doing something like Tragic Macbeth with Ethan, then maybe doing something that's more free-minded and goofy like this was just what Ethan needed to kind of get off his chest. And yeah, I'm not going to say it like totally sticks the landing, but I do think, to counter your point, that for whatever misgivings I do have about the sort of flimsiness of the middle, where maybe there should have been more structurally sound character development or maybe a stronger backbone for what was going on, I think the ending really does kind of save it for me, just in the sense that it is inspired. It's really funny to me. I think Matt Damon, I won't give away who he plays in the film, but his character to me was really funny. He has a monologue in this that is easily one of my favorite comedic beats of the year so far. Yeah, I just think it's I think all together it's just an amusing, fun time. Like I'm not gonna say it's gonna be on like my end of the year list or anything, but yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm still just kind of baffled as to why you have so many resentments about this film.
I've tried to explain it, but every time I try to explain it, you jump in and you're like, well, here you go, John.
I guess I just feel very protective here. It's just like, Aww. But I don't know. I mean, should we, I do feel like at some point we got to talk about, of course, my performance in the film as bystander at the horse track, which I guess it should be said.
It's a dog track.
Yeah, sorry, dog track. I think, when I was walking, in front of the camera, I think it was very natural. I didn't feel forced or put upon, but there's a turn I do where I drop something in the trash can. I kind of walk away and you can see I'm facing camera. It felt very like the onus is on him, like the camera. It didn't feel very natural to me. It kind of took me a little bit out of the film, I have to admit. I wasn't really paying attention to the dialogue and what was happening in that scene because I was just so distracted by this performance and how it felt very conscious of the camera and all that. I don't know if you felt anything about this particular performance, but I would love to hear your thoughts.
I'd have to watch the movie again. So yeah, I don't have any notes for you if that's what you're fishing for. Yeah, no, I feel like I've kind of explained my issues.
I will say real quick, my car tour de force performance, the scene in that parking lot just blew me away. I could not believe that was my vehicle. I looked, completely of the time, very natural, bravo. I thought that was, an Oscar worthy performance there.
I did want to bring up, I'm not sure why Pedro Pascal is even in this. He gets one scene.
Yeah.
He kind of sort of pops up later. And again, maybe this is one of those movies I'll watch again. And because I'll have a better idea of what it's trying to be, I might be able to kind of follow it without being as like consistently annoyed by it and kind of taken off guard with it in a way that just makes the viewing experience unpleasant, just viscerally unpleasant. But then again, I don't know if I would want to spend the 84 minutes going through this again. And a lot of it does come into that opening scene. I think it's very awkwardly staged. And I think it's very indicative of the whole movie where I feel like whenever like action is happening in the movie or a character is doing something, I'm looking for the way in. I'm looking for the like, why should I care that, this character has this briefcase and is doing this thing and then something happens. And if some of it's going to be a mystery, right? I want to be tantalized or, I want the movie to kind of give a suggestion to me and kind of throw something at me. And a lot of it is just, it feels like it's haphazard almost. It's almost sort of like shot a little bit quickly, shot a little bit too rushed. I just wonder if, when Ethan was working on this, and was shooting everything, I just wonder if like there were elements of the script that just weren't working and they kind of hacked away at things. And it just makes the movie feel like I'm going through, honestly, like the cliff notes instead of like the whole picture, which is why I struggle at the end to be like, that was leading toward that. It's like, okay, but because I wasn't pulled in all the way through. Yeah, I don't find the movie very engaging at all. And if anything, more distracting than not, particularly with, not with everybody. I feel like Colman, Domingo, and Bill Camp get plenty of fun things to do. And they were kind of bright spots for me in this. And Feldstein gets like an action scene that I thought was very funny. So again, it's not like the movie. Like I don't want to come across like this thing's a train wreck. Like you're going to hate every second of it. To me, it's just more of like a series of vignettes that are extremely hit or miss.
Sure. I mean, as far as the opening goes, the cold open. Yeah, I mean, I agree in the sense that it is a little bit stilted. I think a lot of that kind of comes down to, it doesn't take me out of the film, but I just don't think Pedro Pascal was very good in this. And I don't really get, like, it felt a little too, his performance I felt was a little too self-aware, maybe a little too on, in a way that I feel like if they had hired, I don't know, like just some Coen brother regular, like William H. Macy or Steve Buscemi or George Clooney or what have you, who I think would have been better about kind of just establishing the stakes, but also just kind of the goofiness of the premise. I think I would have been maybe a little bit more forgiving of whatever stiltedness was intentional in the opening here. But I don't know. I can't say it took me out of the film because, watching that scene, like the first scene in the bar, I felt that nervousness where I was like, okay, I don't know. This may not be great, but there's a build up to that scene involving a corkscrew, and I won't give away the punchline, but that's the moment where I felt like, okay, I'm in safe hands. Like this is going to be pretty funny. Yeah. The corkscrew drag. I thought that was good.
Okay.
It felt very much in line with the Coen brothers and Ethan's sense of humor. And yeah, I don't know. I like I said, I'm just only speaking for myself. Comedy is subjective as well as, I have my, yeah. But
hey,
yeah,
look, it's an original movie. And so I'm always going to hope that these things continue to be made and not enough of them are made, these kind of mid-budget, made for grown-ups kind of flicks. And
sure.
So I'm rooting for it to kind of succeed in spite of my own personal feelings toward it. I'll put that much out there.
That's you've heard it here, folks. Driveway Dolls gets the Cinemaholics seal of approval. Go see in a theater near you.
Now we don't have, the embargo's not up as we record this, so we can't play the Rotten Tomatoes game for this movie. We can't, even take a look at Letterboxd or anything like that. None of that stuff is public yet.
Sure.
What we can do Sorry?
What? I said I didn't even get to finish what I was saying about the cold open, which is just that I think you kind of need to establish some sort of stakes in order to, kind of deliver the punchline.
I agree. I wish the movie did that. Yeah.
Sure. But in any case, I think that's the intention of that scene. You can obviously feel if it's effective or ineffective. I mean, I have kind of mixed feelings myself about that opening scene, but I do have to echo your sentiment about Bill Camp, who I think is so funny in this movie as Curly. He has a line that I've been chuckling to myself thinking about just throughout the day, just the weeks thinking.
By contrast, this movie escaped my brain almost instantly.
Well, I hope my performance...
That's the breaks,
Yeah, I hope my performance, at least lingers on in the recesses of your mind.
One of the few things that did, yeah.
Okay, well, that's...
But yeah, hey, since we can't get any extra context, which we always like to do, we always like to get a read of what other people think.
What are you talking about? I'm giving you extra context throughout this whole dang episode.
Okay, I mean from other people, Will Ashton, who are less biased. Let's be real. For sure, if you end up seeing the movie, all of you listening, I definitely want to know what other people think and maybe to find out, hey, where's everybody else kind of landing on this? I'm very, very curious and interested to find out. Of course, you can email us cinemaholics@gmail.com and just write in if you have some thoughts. And if you haven't already, we do have a Discord. It's in the show notes. It's the In Between Drafts Discord. We have a Cinemaholics channel. So yeah, if you have thoughts, chime in there. We'd love to hear you. And Will Ashton, I think that we can play the Rotten Tomatoes game, but just for a different movie. How about that?
Okay. I'm not sure which movie it's going to be, but let's do it.
Vacation Friends 2. All right. 31 reviews counted. Vacation Friends 2. It came out August 2023. Will Ashton, what do you think the Rotten Tomato score is for Vacation Friends 2? Time for another round.
Did you watch this movie?
I did not know.
I thought you were all about the Vacation Friends.
I can't wait to see it. I've been saving it for a rainy day.
Okay. A vacation day. I don't know, like 31%?
No, it's not 19%, Will Ashton. You're being too nice to Vacation Friends 2. I like it. Okay, audience score, 100 plus ratings. What do you think?
I'm going to say 46%.
A little bit closer, 39%. So, I like this. I think that you took a look at Vacation Friends 2 and you were like, people responded to this negatively, but not that negatively. And then, of course, Letterboxd ratings. We have 12,000 watches. That's 11,000 more than I expected. What do you think the average rating is?
2.4?
Oh, very close. 2.3. Very nice. And that's Vacation Friends 2. Glad we had an opportunity to talk about that one.
Well, I have to imagine Driveway Dolls has at least a Letterboxd rating at this point. We can guess that, I guess. It doesn't?
It does not, no. No cinema score, no Letterboxd rating. There's no reviews it doesn't have like a list yet. They're holding, I think Letterboxd is doing this more and more now, where it's getting harder because of the embargo. I think that they've been, beholden more often to the studios, if that makes sense. So that is what is happening now. Same thing I noticed with Dune Part 2 when I put my review on there. Just a Letterboxd review reaction, not a review. I noticed that you can't really scroll, you can't browse reviews except from your friends. That's the only thing you can see. But there you go. That is Drive Away Dolls. We'll be back soon to talk about Madam Web. And we have a special episode planned for that. This is more of almost like a quasi bonus in terms of, it's not going to be the main event. Madam Web, I feel like that's going to be something else, huh?
We're pulling all the stops for that one. I can't wait to record that episode.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot going on with that. And there is another movie that came out this past weekend that you saw, but I missed my screening. Bob Marley, One Love. Do you have a sentence to recommend it or not recommend it? Just a sentence. Hold back.
It made me appreciate Maestro more.
Wow, there you go. And you do have your full review, of course, on inbetweendrafts.com.
That's true.
5 out of 10. And yeah, Bob Marley. I want to watch the documentary. I never saw the doc, and I heard it's good.
Which one?
There's multiple ones.
I was going to say there are a variety of documentaries about Bob Marley.
I forget the name of the one that was recommended to me, so I'd have to look it up. But I was talking to somebody about this because they were like, oh yeah, I want to watch that, but I really like the documentary. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I've never seen it. Maybe I should give it a shot. The only thing that's been on my radar other than that lately, and Madam Web, we didn't talk about Lisa Frankenstein, but that's been kind of like a soft cult hit for critic. It hasn't been doing super well, but there have been some people who are like, yeah, you know what? This movie's kind of cool. This movie's kind of good. I don't know. But I don't know if I'll see it at some point.
I don't know if it's way too early to even consider this being a cult hit, but I get that
there's early signs of it, I think.
Maybe. I just feel like Focus, who also distributed that film, I guess, just really wants it to be the next Jennifer's Body, which if it is or it isn't,
or
we won't know for several years. I mean, I don't even think Freaky's a cult film as much as I would like it to be. But
wasn't it? I thought it had a little bit of a following. No, maybe not. I don't know. And the only other thing I was going to mention, and you know, this isn't a movie, but it is a big thing in entertainment right now. Avatar: The Last Airbender, the Netflix live action series, is going to be coming out pretty soon. Now, it does kind of feel like one of those ones that like could potentially be a Cinemaholics thing, but we have so many other things to get to. We still haven't even done our top movies of 2023 yet. But yeah. I just want to ask, like, are you going to watch Avatar: The Last Airbender on Netflix?
No, I'm not 14.
14? I don't know. It seems like they're marketing this one toward an older audience because they know that people kind of grew up with this and they're like, they're going to be old. I think they want to make something more appealing to, you know, early 20s, mid 20s, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm assuming it's in the same vein as like the live action One Piece that just came out. I don't know.
I don't know. It seems a little bit more grounded than that, but I can't say. I haven't seen it. And I've heard kind of mixed to positive things so far, so I don't know what to think yet. I'm like, you know what, the animated one is like great already, so I don't need this. I don't care if it's good or bad, but if I end up watching it and it's bad, I won't care because I'm like, well, they already did the movie, and like the show's always going to be there. My thing is that I'm of two minds because like it's one of those situations where I hope that people get to experience the story who are like hung up on the early episodes of Avatar: The Last Airbender. Like the first like 4 episodes, they didn't have the budget yet, and they're a little bit more kiddish. And then the show gets better and better as it goes. But like this could be a better entryway for people to get into the animated show. But then I worry that this will be the end all be all for some people. And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, if it doesn't touch the animated, yeah, I'm a little conflicted on that. But I know for you, it's like,
well, I guess for me, it just kind of feels like these Disney live action remakes were just kind of like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess if you really wanted to know what this would look like in live action and didn't feel satisfied for obvious reasons by the M. Night Shyamalan film, then I guess that serves its purpose. But yeah, I mean, like you, I'm like kind of like, well, I mean, I still need to get through the animated one, so I don't really feel like I need this. But, you know, if it makes people happy, and I feel like the thing that dissuaded me was that wasn't the original Avatar creator involved and then left the project.
Yeah, but apparently there are rumors that they kind of mended the fences. So Michael Dante, Brian DiMartino. I always get their names kind of mixed up, but I think it was Michael who like had this open letter to Netflix, and there was this kind of like falling out. But I think more recently, like people kind of sleuthed on the internet and were like, oh, he deleted that. And there's talks that like maybe they're being a little bit more conducive with Netflix. And there's this larger thing happening with those creators where they're trying to create their own thing with all the Avatar stuff. And that includes like animated stuff, like sequels, spinoffs, things that are in the Avatar universe, but not necessarily remaking the original, which I think is it's just more exciting. It's like, well, yeah. But also, I've been feeling this a little bit too in terms of like TV shows and like things that were popular, like Arrested Development or Community. And I'm like, okay, Community will get its movie, but like at a certain point, it's like people just want to milk this stuff to death, and it gets a little tiresome. But anyway, that's a whole tangent. I don't want to delay. This is the end of a review of Drive Away Dolls. I was
gonna say, I mean, if you just want to keep talking, I have plenty more I can say about Drive Away Dolls.
I think we should hold off. Yeah. And the other, True Detective Night Country. I forgot to mention that too.
Oh yeah. Well, I still need to watch that, but yeah, I'm not hearing great things.
We can call it there. But thanks as always for listening. Hope to see you all in the Discord if you want to hang out with us directly at all. So from the Internet California, I'm Jon and Negroni.
And from the Internet Pennsylvania, ka-chow. I'm Will Ashton. Cars.
See you next time.
Lesbians.